for ugliness, do they?
Nah.
I don't want you to get
Is that
poor
cool?
grade for that.
There. Okay, so in 2017, USNews.com came out with the rankings for all 50 states in education. This included many factors such as college readiness and high school graduation rate. South Carolina ranked dead last in 50th. Obviously, improvements need to be made, and I want to ask you some questions that influence education. Mr. Critcher is a former public high school principal in North Carolina for how many years?
8.
8 years. And now
I was
teaches.
assistant 6 before those.
Okay.
As a principal.
And so now he teaches at my old school in South Carolina called Marlboro Academy. And he gets to see the things that we struggle with every day in education. So, what are some of the main problems you see with schools today?
Probably to start with, I think that the more that educators can make decisions, the better. A lot of times, the federal government will dictate what you can do with federal money. Sometimes the state they earmark money for special programs, and I just think it's very important that we appreciate the money that the federal government and the state gives. This is talking from public school standpoint, and but they need the autonomy that they could give educators, the state superintendent, the county superintendents, the principals, all the way down. I think that would be the best way to make sure that the funds are used properly and are not wasted. Another thing that has to happen, of course, with the socioeconomic breakdown that we have in the Southeast, and my public school as administrator was right across the border in North Carolina. So our county is almost identical to Marlboro County, where I'm at now with his private school. Once the jobs left in the late 90s and early 2000s, you had an exodus of the middle class because they had to move where the jobs were. And that left a very difficult situation where you have a lot of have and have-nots. And a lot of times that causes problems in the school. It causes problems between the teachers. It causes problems between the students. Therefore, an effort has to be made that all students are treated equal with public funds, with anything involved with the educational situation they have. Probably the biggest issue that's facing the public schools now, especially from a PR standpoint, is the discipline aspect. I truly believe that 99% of all children are good. I believe that. I've always believed that in education. The 1% of the population that causes most of the problem or influences the other children to misbehave has to be addressed. We have to give our schools the authority to suspend. We have to give our schools the authority to have law enforcement to help out with these children. And we have to have community support from the churches, from the different Rotary clubs, everything, to make sure that the 99% of the good kids have every chance they have to be in a safe atmosphere where they can learn and behave.
Thank you. You don't necessarily have to look at the camera if you don't want to, but
Okay.
You're doing a great job. So thank you. How do you think, you kind of touched on this, but how do you think many schools in South Carolina, being in a rural and one of, like, some would say, like, poor areas, are like, how do you think that affects education for them?
Oh, they're definitely at a disadvantage. And the biggest disadvantage, a lot of things revolves around money, but they're also at a disadvantage about the resources they have in the community. They don't have the large libraries. They don't have the internships that they can go out in the factories and the communities that they used to have. These children don't have a lot of the role models that they used to have when it was more money and flowing into the area. And combine all those things, it makes it really hard for a county to progress. It's hard to attract teachers, quality teachers, to poor sections of North, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, all the southeastern states that are having problems. Teachers, they want to be, especially if they're single coming out of college, they want to have things to do and places to go. And of course, where we're at in northeastern South Carolina, we're at least an hour and a half to 2 hours from any major city. We're talking Myrtle Beach, Charlotte, Columbia, Raleigh. So that's another difficulty that small rural schools have to work with. Also, the children of the rural communities, especially the poor children, they don't have all the early educational benefits that are offered in metropolitan areas, such as Smart Start, Head Start, things like that. They are here, but they're not supported like they should be. Whereas in a lot of urban societies, you have tremendous amount of resources that will work with the children. And the younger a child gets to attend some type of school, the better.
Okay, thank you. How does not being able to give as good of salaries and benefits to teachers as other workers receive affect the quality of teachers or teaching?
There's no doubt about it. When I went into education in the early 80s, of course the salary was down, but we had a lot of extra benefits. We of course, retirement was huge. Our Blue Cross Blue Shield was excellent. We had the support of the county, and we had support of we had the support of parents. We were making, you can never make enough money, but we had money where we could raise our family. Our family could have a nice place to live, could eat. We could send our children to college. Unfortunately, teacher salaries have not kept up with inflation over the last 25 to 30 years. And it's really hard to tell a young person to go spend 4 years of their life in college. Most of them get a postgraduate degree, which is another 1 or 2 years. They come out with a lot of college loans, and they're going to starting salaries in the low 30s, high 20s. Sometimes the masters you can get close to 40, but $40,000 a year in 2018 is tough to live off of as a married or as a single parent, to raise your children, to have the things that you want in life. Of course, 99% of all teachers, they go into teaching because they love children and they love what they're going to do, but you still have to have the at least the chance to make a quality salary.
Okay. And finally, what steps should we take to make improvement? That's statewide. That could be with like public officials, anything.
I think the biggest, I've already mentioned this a couple of times, but the biggest thing that I think can happen to public schools in a rural state is to give autonomy to that county with funds, with the resources. Things are a lot different in Marlboro County than they are in Lee County in South Carolina. Things are different in Marlboro County than Florence County. Each county is a little different. The counties in South Carolina in the mountains, they may have totally different problems that the counties at the coast have. And so my number one thing that I would do if I was in charge of education would be to put the funds in the hands of the people as locally as possible. And not only would that help with textbooks or technology, but it would also help with bonuses for salaries. It would help with drawing the new teachers into the area. It would help with programs that the children, they can do online learning much easier, and then the child that grows up in Marlboro County has the same advantages of a child that grows up in Columbia, or grows up in Atlanta, or grows up in New York. And so that would be the number one thing I would do, is give autonomy to local superintendents, local principals, whoever's in the firing line there. The second thing that I would do to improve would be to make sure that we give every chance for staff and faculty to have support from the community, from parents, from central office, from the state, and because the teachers, that's where the rubber hits the road, and they're the ones that make the decisions daily, hundreds of decisions daily about how they're going to treat the 25 to 30 children in their care. And so if we could do those two things, I think that education would take a tremendous step forward in South Carolina, the public schools of South Carolina.
Thank you. I really like your first point made about like every community is different, and so you can't just have one set of standards for the whole state. You need to localize it more.
You're exactly right. You just can't have a blanket policy.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, William.